Honourable the Speaker.
We acknowledge and pay respect to the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the traditional and original owners and continuing custodians of this land on which we gather today, and acknowledge elders past and present. I now invite members to join me in reciting the Lord's Prayer, or to stand in silence and reflect or pray on their responsibilities to the people of Tasmania. Almighty God, we humbly ask you to grant your blessing upon this Parliament. Lead our deliberations and make them succeed to your glory and the true welfare of the people of Tasmania. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I wish to advise the House that I have received the following correspondence from Her Excellency the Governor. Dear Speaker, I have received a letter dated 12 February 2025 from Ms Rebecca White MP tendering her resignation as a member for Lyons in the House of Assembly. I have instructed the Electoral Commission to proceed in accordance with the provisions of Part 9 of the Electoral Act 2004. Yours sincerely, Barbara Baker, Governor. Before moving to questions, Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I advise the House that Minister Vincent is absent from question time today, and I will take questions in relation to his portfolio areas. Minister Jentzsch is also absent from the chamber this week, and can I convey all our condolences to Roger on the loss of his father, and having had a lengthy conversation with him last evening, he very much appreciates the support and the reaching out of members of Parliament right across the chamber in recent times. So thank you. And Roger's acting arrangements will be Minister for Finance, Minister Barnett, Minister for Children and Youth, Minister Ogilvie, Minister for Mental Health and Wellbeing, Minister Petrusma, and Minister for Community Services, Minister Palmer.
Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I inform the House that following the resignation of the Member for Lyons, Rebecca White, I've made the following changes to the Shadow Ministry. The Member for Clark, Ella Haddad, has taken on the role of Shadow Attorney-General and Shadow Minister for Justice, and the Member for Franklin, Meg Brown, has taken on the role of Shadow Minister for Community Services.
Thank you. There being no further updates to the House, I will call on question time. Leader of the Opposition.
Here.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Premier, there was zero net debt when you came into office, not a cent. But the fact you can't manage money means Tasmania will soon have more than $10 billion worth of debt. Every year, Tasmanians will be required to find $500 million to fund interest repayments, nearly enough to double the number of teachers in Tasmania and completely abolish payroll tax. If you can't manage the budget, how can you lead our state? And do you accept responsibility for this budget mess?
Here.
Question.
Call the Premier.
Here.
Shame.
Welcome back. I saw the TikTok, or whatever it was, a few moments ago, which was an interesting start to what a very serious challenges we have for the state of Tasmania. But in the honourable member's question around debt, that is why we have a sensible pathway to surplus. That is why.
Where is it?
What is it each year, every year?
Spend more.
How does the pathway?
And the challenge we inherited, and there are a number of challenges we inherited since you go back to 2014.
There was no net debt.
Can't just say something.
Was that our economy, of course, unemployment rate was over 8%,
That's right.
of which we've halved.
Right. Spot on.
We've employed, and through the good work of the Tasmanian business community and others, of course, over 40,000 more jobs since that time.
Cane printing.
And of course, we were feeling the effects of brutal cuts to the public service, not thought through. Ideas like closing schools, ideas and actions.
How many could you open for 500 million?
Ideas and actions such as
interest, 1 year.
sacking nurses and putting hospital beds
space could you
in
build for
storage,
$500 million?
Mr. Willing.
What are
The question is around the pathway to budget
And so
management. There's a pathway
that's
outside if
why
people
we
want.
said at the election time we would take the public service levels back to 2022 levels in our fiscal strategy.
Pre-Rockcliffe.
That is why.
Pre-Rockcliffe for that era.
made a mess of it.
That is why, of course, when it comes
Your plan is to
our
undo your own
budget,
damage. That's your plan.
our budget,
Members on my left.
we mentioned that reduction
Not one we can have.
in terms of 5 or 6% of the public service, and that is why in the RER it names it up as well, which is why we need a very measured approach to reducing the numbers in our public service of around 2,500. And I've been very transparent about this all the way. So there's no surprises here. What is important is that we keep the momentum in the economy, where businesses...
Going downhill, this growth.
Thank you.
Keep the momentum down.
Thank you.
Members on my left.
Where we keep the momentum in the economy, where people are continuing to invest and be confident about Tasmania, which is why I was with key stakeholders yesterday, Honourable Speaker,
Asking someone else
for
for
the
money.
Team Tasmania approach. Irrespective
What
of,
peak body were you representing?
irrespective of
How is that?
who governs in Canberra,
It would be nice to be able to
After
hear.
the
It would be
federal
nice to be able to
election-
hear the Premier.
Thank you. After the federal election, irrespective of who governs Canberra, whether that be Labor or the Coalition, we have put forward as a government with 11 key stakeholders, 11 key priorities that we want the federal government and political parties to commit to. All about adding value to what we're already doing in terms of getting that investment and more investment into Tasmania so the economy can grow, more people can be employed, and we can fund those essential services. What we announced when it comes to the right-sized public service is actually delivering better services. That's right. The right-sized public service that we can afford.
Premier's time for answering the question has expired. I'll hear the supplementary, but I think the question was relevant to the answer was relevant to the question.
The question particularly that I wanted to hear an answer to was, does the Premier accept responsibility for the state of the budget, given that he's been the Premier for 3 years and in this government for 11?
Great.
Actually, I'm not going to allow the supplementary because the question actually, when you got to it after the preamble, was if you can't manage the budget, how do you lead the state? The Premier addressed that budget question. If I can, thank you. So I'll call on the second question later.
My question is to the Premier. Premier, over the parliamentary break, it was revealed that your minority government blew the state budget by $500 million just this year. The fact you can't manage money means that Tasmania now has a budget deficit 4 times worse than at the height of COVID, a time when money was basically being shovelled out the door. Even worse, this happened while you received more GST and other revenue than you expected, yet you spent new revenue 11 times over. Premier, do you accept responsibility for this budget mess?
If Mr. Willey and Mr. Abetz would like to answer the questions, then they have an opportunity to do so in conversation outside.
The Premier does a fantastic job, Speaker.
Are you sure about that?
I know it's day one, but how about we call the Premier to answer the question? Premier.
Thank you very much. Right answer, Eric. Can I say I take responsibility for investing through really challenging times. I take responsibility with the Premier of the day and the Cabinet of the day and the Government of the day investing in community organisations, investing in essential health services to keeping people alive, well and in work. I didn't hear any complaints on that side, apart from we should be spending more money on that side during those very challenging times. I take responsibility for ensuring that we are investing in the Commission of Inquiry recommendations to keep our young people and children safe.
Members on my left.
The honourable member refers to the RER, of which $345 million, if my memory serves me correctly, was related to health.
Didn't account for it in the other years.
Which was...
Shadow Treasurer.
And so when you talk about shoveling money out the door, I really believe that is protecting people and looking after people that are in
You're so
need
confused.
when it comes to our health system.
And so you're going to keep spending, or?
And so I hear those opposite talking about need for more public services every second day, and every day after that Mr Willie's out complaining about the debt, but with no solutions to fix it, of course. And so we're working through some very challenging circumstances. We are plotting a pathway to surplus.
Where is it?
Members on my left. Members on my left. The Premier is actually answering the question from the Leader of the Opposition,
Thank
so
you.
let it be heard.
Plotting a pathway to surplus in a very measured way. We're not going to do the Labor way. The Labor way, which is raising taxes and cutting services, therefore undermining,
Premium economist Saul Estlake recommended doing that.
All right, if the House can settle down, there's 20 seconds left, Premier.
Read it. Good read.
Yep, thank you. And we're not going to do the Labor way, because the Labor way didn't work. The Labor Green way didn't work in 2011, where you not only went into recession or took the economy into recession, but
The Premier's
cut
time for
nurses.
answering the question has expired. I'll hear the supplementary.
The question, Honourable Speaker, was do you accept responsibility for this budget mess? And I haven't heard the Premier answer that question directly.
I may have misheard. I thought the Premier said yes, but then he did go on to clarify. Premier, did you wish to add to that at all?
You do take responsibility.
Thank you. If I'm going to call on supplementary questions, the
Just to
member for
put it in
Bass will be
context,
silent.
Honourable Speaker, I take responsibility for ensuring that we have a sustainable budget moving forward.
We don't.
Given
We don't.
the exceptional need for investment in public services through the Commission of Inquiry and the pandemic. And I take responsibility for that as Leader of the Government, as I take responsibility for ensuring we have the right size public service, delivering better services for our community. Because I'm not alone. Every other state around Australia is facing these challenges around the investments that needed to be made during the pandemic and other challenges. And we're all working through that at this present time. Now, when it comes to our debt to economy ratio, if I can put it that way, we have some of the lowest.
Premier's time for answering the supplementary has expired. I'll call the Honourable Leader of the Greens.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Premier, you shamelessly used the pretence of undertaking a review of the Integrity Commission to delay reforms you already knew are needed. Dozens of recommendations from the decade-old Cox Review remain outstanding. Despite saying you accepted recommendations from the Commission of Inquiry and the Weiss Review, you pushed work on those into your review too. So now what? First, you refused to even look at these essential reforms until your review was completed. Now you're refusing to do the review and you've released no alternative plans. It's truly appalling. Are we to conclude you've abandoned your efforts to reform the Integrity Commission, or will you show some integrity of your own for a change and commit to implementing these much needed and long overdue reforms?
I call the Premier.
Well, thank you, Dr Woodruff, for your question. And if I might answer the question straight up and say yes, we're committed to those recommendations, as has been outlined, the Cox Review recommendations and the Weiss Review recommendations as well. Okay? I don't agree with you around the alternative pathway. We did have legal advice and we formed the view that in order to protect the Integrity Commission, the independent review was not possible, but rather a review by the Joint Standing Committee of Integrity, if that's the right terminology for it, can undertake that review. Okay? In what is, in my view, more open and more transparent. Okay? Now, this has been a long journey for me when it comes to the Integrity Commission, because I was on the Joint Standing Committee that recommended to set up an Integrity Commission back in 2008 and 2009. So I believe in it. And we embarked in good faith when it comes to the JLN agreement around the review of the Integrity Commission, but the principles still apply. All right? It's just another way of doing it.
It's another way of stalling and doing nothing.
No, it's actually not.
Okay, it's not a conversation, it's a question and an answer. If we could move through, please.
As Minister Ellis pointed out, a committee of this House and of the other place as well, where we can, in my view, in a more open and transparent way, conduct a review. But in the meantime, the Cox recommendations and the Weiss report recommendations will be implemented and work is underway now.
Honourable Speaker, a supplementary
I'll hear the
question.
supplementary.
I'm very pleased to hear that the Premier has committed to those recommendations being progressed and work's underway. Can you please tell us when you expect they will be completed?
The question is in order as it relates to information that was provided in the answer.
The work is progressed.
Thank you for the question, Dr Woodruff. There has already been a significant amount of work undertaken in the Cox Review recommendations and others suggested reforms as well, including consultation through the release of a discussion paper in 2022. It's a complex area, as I believe we all appreciate, with many additional issues and proposals arising out of later reviews and consultation, with one of the
Rubbish.
Well, it's actually not.
There are 151...
Honourable Leader of the Greens, please, let's get
With
through the
one of the
question time without anyone having to leave.
proposing 45 technical amendments to the Act. Now, to your question, the Department of Justice is drafting a plan for staged implementation of the recommendations, and I can commit to it as soon as possible. I can't give a date, but, you know, I respect the fact that you and others in the House, and I believe we all, want to strengthen and the provisions.
The Premier's time for answering the supplementary has expired. Before I call the Honourable Member for Franklin, can we recognise in the gallery our guest today? This is the first of 3 groups from Hobart College, the legal studies students. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you find it informative and enlightening and not as fun as some others might want you to find it. I will call the Honourable Member for Franklin.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. Minister, the collapse of Healthscope's maternity services at the Hobart Private Hospital, where hundreds of babies are born each year, has sent shockwaves through our community. I acknowledge that negotiations between the government and healthcare providers are still ongoing and there are complex contractual arrangements in place. But Minister, while you can never bring back the Queen Alex, you and your government now have an opportunity to step in and seize this opportunity. Will you use this moment to commit to re-establishing a dedicated public maternity and women's healthcare facility in southern Tasmania?
Call the Minister for Health.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for Franklin for his question. And just in regards to HealthScope, Honourable Speaker, I just want to update the House and just let them know that the decision to withdraw maternity services from the Hobart Private Hospital was a commercial decision made by HealthScope, which is a for-profit private equity company based in North America. And I believe that HealthScope sadly let Tasmanian mums and their babies down for pure business reasons and have caused distress for expecting parents in southern Tasmania with that decision. And our government's number one priority through all of this was to ensure that mothers and their babies have the support and services that they need during their birthing journeys now and into their future. So that is why we did take swift and decisive action. We worked with all key stakeholders, including the federal government, HealthScope, Calvary unions, the AMA insurers, women's health advocates, obstetricians, midwives and nurses. And as a result, less than a week after I was formally notified of HealthScope's decision, I was able to stand beside the Federal Health Minister to deliver a solution. Now, just in regards to the Honourable Member's question, the $6 million that was secured in federal funding will upgrade infrastructure and equipment for the Royal Hobart Hospital as well as Calvary Hospital. Importantly, it will allow us to expand maternity services at the Royal Hobart Hospital, but also it will enable us to have a new mother and baby unit at St John's Park. Now, it is essential that we have a private hospital provider in this state that is economically feasible and will stay here. Calvary has been here for over 80 years providing services, and we want to ensure that we have a viable maternity service going forward. So, and I want to thank Calvary for working with us in regards to this solution. HealthScope still has the contract to deliver services at their current site. They have said that they will be continuing to deliver other services at that site. So, indulging in hypotheticals as to what can occur at that site, I'm unable to give any information into that becoming a further women's and children's site because HealthScope is still there providing private services, albeit their very disappointing decision to stop providing maternity services. But I do want to assure the mothers, the fathers, and and especially the mums and their bubs that we will continue to deliver the maternity services in the southern Tasmania that they need, with the added benefit of having a brand new mother and baby unit, which will ensure that the current beds that have been occupied by the mother and baby unit in the Royal Hobart Hospital will transfer to a more holistic service based at St John's Park.
Honourable, thank you. I'll take the leader of the Greens.
Thank you, Speaker. Question is to the Premier. Premier, your lack of interest in a strong integrity commission is matched by your own lack of integrity. Look at your conduct on the stadium, the pokies reform and now the integrity commission in action.
We'll pause the clock for a moment and I'll take the leader of business.
Thank you, Speaker. The reflection on the Premier is completely unacceptable and needs to be withdrawn.
Does the member who's been offended has to take personal offence? Premier, do you take personal offence? In which case you may ask the member to withdraw. I will caution members that there are some very interesting lines around the language that we use. I think this one was probably within the historic terms of language that's used, but but if the Premier has taken personal offence, we can have it withdrawn.
Well, I've been around a while, so I can cope for most things, but this is meant to be a safe workplace, and so in the interest of all members, the honourable member should withdraw.
I'll ask the honourable member to withdraw and rephrase your question.
I'll withdraw.
Thank you.
Premier, your lack of interest in a strong integrity commission is obvious to all of us. You obviously do have an interest in the stadium. Have you started the clock again, Speaker?
So yes, we...
Thank you. You have...
But we might actually, just for the sake of making this work very well, can we start the time for the question and the question question again, please.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
You have 1 minute.
Premier, your lack of interest in a strong integrity commission is obvious to all Tasmanians who are watching your behaviour. Look at your conduct on the stadium, on pokies reform and on reforming the Integrity Commission themselves, not to mention your relationship as a government with Big Salmon. In your deal to form government last year, you promised a review of the Integrity Commission would be conducted and completed by April this year. 10 months later, you've abandoned that commitment using the most pathetic of excuses. Premier, you said there's a legal issue standing in the way of this review, and we're very sceptical of that. But even if there was, believe it or not, it's something that Parliament can fix. It is our job to make and change laws. So, Premier, we've done your job and drafted you a bill to fix your so-called problem, and we ask, what is your excuse now?
I'm sorry, is that the end of your question? That's the end of the question?
That was my question. What's his excuse now?
The question is, the Greens having drafted a bill, what is your excuse, Premier? I will call you to the question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for...
I do note that we do normally try to circulate documents with time for members to read them. So.
I thought the Premier, who would be tabling it himself, would like to have a quick look before he tables it today.
Thank you.
I did say interjections if they were humorous. That's borderline humorous, but I'll allow it.
I appreciate the bill you've drafted, and then we've got my middle name. Thank you very much for that, which is my mother's maiden name, if anyone wants to know. Look, it'd be far simpler for there to be no legal barriers and for the review to be done, as we've explained. And I wrote a very considered letter to the chair of the committee, Ms Armitage, around these matters and outlined my reasoning. I do believe in a robust integrity commission and framework, incidentally, and I believe the pathway of the committee, Joint Standing Committee reviewing, is the most open and transparent and legal. But, I appreciate your work in drafting a bill for me, but I believe the pathway is set, and indeed the Cox review recommendations will be done and implemented, as indeed the Weiss as well, and of course the attorneys leading that work.
Supplementary question. The Premier
I'll
said
hear
it would be far simpler to conduct the review, and we've just shown that that is now possible, which was his commitment with the JLN for the forming of government.
Members on my right, I'm trying to hear.
Will he be doing that, as well as whatever the Integrity Commission it wants to do? Will you do that work?
I'm pretty sure the Premier's already answered that, but if he wishes to add to it, he can choose to. But I think he made it clear that he's following the pathway of the Joint Standing Committee. Is that correct, Premier? Yep. And I think we'll move on to the next question, Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Premier. Premier, the decisions that you have made since becoming Premier have produced the two biggest budget deficits in Tasmanian history. And not just by a little bit, Premier, these two deficits are nearly $1 billion worse than the deficits that occurred during COVID. You are bankrupting Tasmania, and there's still no serious plan to deal with it. Your latest plan, a hiring freeze you're outsourcing to unelected bureaucrats, is lazy policy and won't go close to fixing your budget mess. Can you outline how much you intend to save specifically from this so-called hiring freeze?
I call the Premier.
They'd have credibility if there was an alternate budget.
Thank you.
How many did you do? How many did you do over there?
How many did you do?
If I can, if we can just wait until everyone's quiet, give the Premier more time to think about how to answer the question. That's an interesting strategy. Premier, to the question.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I thank the Honourable Member for his question. The right-sized public service around 6% less than it currently is, back to 2022 levels. 3,500 numbers been out there and very plain for everyone to see. So I'm more interested in the honourable member's previous questions when he sort of
Answer the question.
which I've answered very clearly in terms of my level of responsibility for investing in essential services. And, you know, often, if I could, I'd like to look at all the media releases
$500 million
that have been done by the Labor Party over the course of the last couple of years, as you put it, and I bet it's about spend. And more. And we will ensure that we have the right size public service.
$120 million on Mariners
Have
to not
a
build
lot
anything.
of faith.
Deputy and Leader.
I have a lot of faith in our head of our state service working sensibly and methodically in a measured way with our heads of agency around the hiring freeze. Okay, to ensure that we bring the pathway to surplus, sustainable public service, the right size to deliver the required services and better services for the Tasmanian people. That is sensible. It is what has been welcomed by the business community. It is what we believe is the best way forward without constricting the economy through massive sackings of public servants, like happened in 2011. Nurses, police, gone. And that undermined confidence, you know, as well as the services that governments should be delivering for the people of Tasmania. And so I believe we can work through this in a very sensible and methodical way. All states are going through it. And we will have a sensible pathway to surplus, of which this is a good way to achieving that right size state service that Tasmanians can afford, that is sustainable, and that will deliver better services for Tasmanians.
I'll hear the supplementary from the Leader of the Opposition.
The question was, can the Premier outline how much he intends to save in nominal terms through his so-called hiring freeze?
I will draw the Premier to that question. It was reasonably specific.
And answered as well, because we've mentioned the 2,500 employees.
It's a financial figure. It's in dollar terms?
Oh, yes, I do.
Thank you,
I
members
also
on my left.
understand, well, it's taken some time to work through the alternative election manifesto from the Labor Party, who, of course, come in here today talking about debt but wanted to spend 3 times as much as we committed to at the last election.
I will hear, Premier, I will hear the point of order from the Leader of the Opposition.
I have 20 seconds. It's a nominal figure. I'm looking for a financial number the Premier is seeking to save. I ask you to draw him back to the question.
Premier, I'll draw you to the actual question, or you can choose to retain your seat.
Sorry. Look at this.
I'll draw you to the question or resume your seat.
Look at this.
And with that, the time has expired. Thank you. I will take the independent member for
So
Clark.
real life saved by the bell.
Thank you, members on my left.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Treasurer, the budget is in freefall. The only way there is a pathway to surplus is by reading the charts upside down, as economist Saul Estlake says. Indeed, you're ignoring all the sensible budget repair measures suggested by Mr Estlake. Instead, you're taking an axe to our hard-working public servants who deliver services for all Tasmanians, including the most vulnerable. Yet you have decided to target the public service by announcing a hiring freeze on so-called non-essential workers. But you can't even say who non-essential workers are, let alone how much the freeze will save the government or how you will achieve these savings. Treasurer, why are you targeting our public servants rather than cutting spending on infrastructure like the stadium, generating more income, or reining in corporate welfare to donor mates?
I'll call the Treasurer. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, through you, Speaker, to the honourable member for the question. And it's good to be back. I'm not going to do any TikTok moves right now. Or ever perhaps. We take this very seriously, what we're doing in this parliament. Very important to support the best interests of Tasmanians. And I will not be embarking on those charades. But in terms of the public service and your question in particular, let's be very clear, as the Premier has said, this is about getting the right size public service and the right shape, in the right place, with the right tools to deliver the best services possible for the people of Tasmania. See, we want to improve the service to the people of Tasmania. We want a stronger Tasmania, both now and for the years ahead. So we have not just a plan but a vision to deliver on that. I outlined very clearly those plans with that announcement on Sunday. The Premier, obviously with the business community yesterday, acknowledged the importance of that, and the business community and industry have backed it in. This is about getting the balance right. The Premier's indicated earlier today that we invested significantly during COVID, a global pandemic. We saved lives. We saved livelihoods, people's businesses, people's jobs. We kept them going. We supported families during tough times. We invested. Do you know what we invested? More than $2 billion of taxpayers' money, because they deserved it, and we're proud of that effort. We're proud of that effort. And then we've had a commission of inquiry which has taken a legal liability for more than 4 decades. And it's our responsibility. The Premier's led the way. This government's backed it in. And I think on the whole, we've received strong support across the parliament, across the community for those 191 recommendations. And guess what? That cost another $1 billion.
That's right.
Another $1 billion, 400 more, 460 million to implement, which is ongoing, that effort. And of course, the legal liability had a significant payout just a few months ago. So that's in the budget. It's there. So we are now in a position of taking this pathway to surplus to 2930, and we will deliver on that. I have a still-like commitment as the Treasurer on behalf of this government to deliver that pathway to surplus by 2930 through you, Speaker. And so we are making the right decision for the people of Tasmania, and we're proud of it.
The question has expired. I'm assuming I'm hearing a supplementary.
Thank you. The Treasurer, in his response, identified again the need to have the right size public service. Can the Treasurer please name one example of a position which does not fit his definition of a right size public service and is a non-essential worker? Can you give one example, please, Treasurer?
I will call the Treasurer because he did identify the right size, right shape answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer.
Yes, thanks very much, Speaker. As I said, the right size, the right shape, in the right place with the right tools to get the job done. And I've made very clear, as I did on Sunday and again in recent days, that in terms of those essential workers through you, Speaker, we're talking about continuing the effort, whether they are the people fighting the fires that are so essential, whether it's our doctors, our nurses, our police, our teachers. I'm answering the question.
I'm sorry, I'll take the point of order.
I've asked the Treasurer to give one example. Can you please throw him to the question?
I can't force him to answer it, but I will draw the Treasurer to the question.
Thank you very much. And as I was saying, I've outlined exactly those essential workers that are so... Through you, Speaker, if I could continue.
I can't hear the Treasurer.
Yes, and so we have asked our agency heads to make those decisions in consultation with the head of the State Service and to make that review and to be consulted
the question
accordingly.
has expired. I will take the independent member for Braddon, Mrs Pentland. Mrs Beswick, sorry, my apologies, Mrs Pentland. Mrs Beswick. I did really well with independent member for Braddon, I thought.
Honourable Speaker, thank you. My question is to the Minister for Transport. Minister, those of us who were hoping Tasmania could recoup some of the revenue lost due to the Spirit saga were disappointed that the leasing negotiations fell over. While you've confirmed Spirit 4 will return to Tasmania, the logistical challenge will become twice as difficult when Spirit 5 is here as well. Noting it was due for delivery 6 months after Spirit 4, which is now, when will the Spirit 5 be completed? Will it come directly to Tasmania, or will you again explore leasing options in Europe to help offset the financial hit on our state?
I will call the Minister for Transport.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for her question. And it is a very sensible question for us to consider as a government and for the benefit of the people of Tasmania whether there are commercial opportunities in relation to Spirit 4 and 5. And we did that with Spirit 4. Your specific question is in relation to Spirit 5. Spirit 5 is, at this stage, anticipated for sea trials on April the 7th, and those sea trials commence with the diesel or bunker fuel. They then go out again on the LNG, and that is all in preparation for the handing over of Spirit 5 to the Tasmanian people. And until all those sea trials are finished, I'm unable to provide you with a definitive answer or date as to when we take possession of Spirit 5. But if there is an opportunity for a commercial venture to enable us to gain some income from Spirit 5, yes, we will explore that as we are duty bound for the benefit of the people of Tasmania. We can either have her do nothing or we explore opportunities. That is what we've done with Spirit 4. Can I say we will continue to do so in the event that something arises that is commercially beneficial for the people of Tasmania. We will pursue such a course. Any sensible person confronted with that which the government has been confronted would seek to recoup that any possibility of money for the people of Tasmania. That has to be done in a proper commercial sense, and that is what the TT line is explored, will continue to explore, but at this stage in relation to Spirit 4, those opportunities seem to have been exhausted. But that said, we will always be open to consider commercial opportunities for the benefit of the people of Tasmania, and when Spirit 5 comes online, we will be doing exactly the same. And the commercial common sense of the member for Braddon is something which I suggest the Leader of the Opposition should adopt.
No, thanks.
No supplementary. I will take the Shadow Treasurer, Mr Willie.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Ever since the 2019 budget, your government has promised to implement measures involving cuts to non-essential and backline jobs. Every time you've refused to say which jobs are considered non-essential. You've never had a serious policy to address your budget problem, and as a result, Tasmania's budget position has continued to deteriorate rapidly. You've now posted the two biggest deficits in the state's history by a long way and put the state on a path to a $10 billion debt. And you still can't say which jobs you consider are non-essential. Is a senior media and communications officer essential? A job currently being advertised with state growth with a six-figure salary.
Exactly.
What about a senior communications officer role at the Department of Justice, also currently advertised with a six-figure salary? When you are the one who've created the problem, and when these are the sorts of roles being advertised, can you see why no one believes you have what it takes to fix Tasmania's budget mess?
I'll call the Premier.
What we won't be doing is putting hospital beds in storage and sacking nurses. We won't be doing that. So I'm not sure if it's implied in your question that's exactly what we will be doing, but I can assure you we won't be undertaking significant significant cuts as you did when it comes to frontline services. a nurse a day for 9 months, 108 police officers, if my memory serves me correctly. And not only did that undermine good public services that Tasmanians expect, but also it undermined the confidence in the economy, which is why...
Answer the question.
Which is why businesses shed jobs, which is why unemployment was around 8.6%.
Point of honour.
I'll take the point of order without assistance from the Leader of Government Business. Mr Willie.
Speaker, the Premier's gone nowhere near the question. I outlined a number of roles. He won't answer what is a non-essential role. And does he have what it takes to fix the budget crisis that he's created?
Premier, you have spent over 2 minutes discussing 2011. I draw you to the question.
Yes, I have what it takes. Do you? Do you? The Labor way is higher taxes, and cutting essential services. And that's not what we're going to do. We're not going to cut essential...
What are you going to do then?
We're not going to sack nurses, doctors and police and teachers.
Keep those spin doctors. Essential for you.
Members on my left, I understand how passionately everybody feels about this, but the question is a serious one and the Premier needs to address it.
So, we set the policy direction, all right? And we said...
It's not essential.
I just called members. Thank you.
At the election, in an open and transparent way, that we will have the right size public service and ensure that they're at 2022 levels. We said it in the budget. The RER was there. This is no surprises.
You ignore your own fiscal strategy.
We will get the job done.
They're not worth the paper they're written on.
And we will work across agencies, the head of the state service, which, of course, Kath Morgan-Wicks will do and is doing an exceptional job. We'll work with heads of agencies to ensure that the policy objective is implemented in terms of the right size public service delivering better services and that reduction of around 6% in the state service to bring it to sustainable
Premier's time for
levels.
answering has expired. No supplementary. I'll take the Leader of the Greens.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And my question is to the Premier. Premier, it's on the public record that the Integrity Commission has been investigating at least 2 MPs since 2022. These years-long investigations clearly show why the Commission needs to have both its powers and its funding beefed up. But these delays also raise other questions. A report by ABC journalist Adam Holmes last week noted that taxpayers have funded over $250,000 in legal fees for unknown MPs for unknown reasons. We don't even know how many ministers or Liberal backbenchers this spending relates to. Looking at these ongoing Integrity Commission investigations and these huge legal bills side by side, it's reasonable to ask whether there's a relationship. We know you can't comment on the specifics of an Integrity Commission matter, but surely you can provide a general response. It's so clearly in the public interest. Has any taxpayer funding been used to assist any of your MPs in relation to Integrity Commission investigations?
The member's time has expired for answer. I'll call the Premier.
I thank the honourable member for her question. I'm advised, of course, that our public officers and ministers are involved in a vast array of work programs, strategic issues and complex matters in undertaking their duties in serving the Tasmanian community. However, sometimes they may be the subject of legal proceedings, inquiries, claims or actions, despite the fact that they are acting in good faith and within the scope of their duties. It is appropriate to provide legal assistance for indemnity to public officers and ministers to ensure fair treatment of employees and to protect the Crown's interests and the integrity and effective management of the state service.
Supplementary question.
I'll hear the supplementary from the Leader.
The Premier didn't answer the question because the Cabinet approves those legal fees, and my question was, has any taxpayer funding, Premier, been used to assist any of your MPs in relation to Integrity Commission matters? That must have come before you in Cabinet.
I will draw the Premier to that question.
I think, Honourable Member, for the supplementary question, I'm not able to comment on Cabinet matters and don't intend to do so.
May I confirm or deny it then? Okay.
Thank you. I will actually take... Who was first? You're all very close.
$250,000 is taken.
I'll be taking no one until the Leader of the Greens has finished her conversation. Thank you. And with that, I will take Mr Willie, the Shadow Treasurer.
Here.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question's to the Premier. When you became Premier, you said your goal was to lead a government with heart. You increased the size of the public service significantly, adding thousands of new positions, and posted the 2 biggest deficits in Tasmania's history. You now claim there are too many non-essential workers in the public service. Premier, you are the one who's trashed the state's finances, and you can't say who your so-called hiring freeze applies to. How can Tasmanians trust the economic vandals to clean up the budget mess?
Here.
Great question.
I'll call the Premier.
It's a terrible record.
Sorry, we're all good over here? Premier, you can go to the answer now.
Thank you. Well, thank you, the Honourable Member, for his question. When it comes to investing in essential services, I'm very proud of our record. I'm very proud of the fact that we've invested in 2,500 more nurses and frontline professionals. I'm very proud of the fact that we continue to invest in schools to ensure that our kids can read and write, and I'm very pleased with not only the investment we're making but also
You
the
might
policy.
be whispering it, Deputy Leader, but I can hear you. That'll cease.
The policy we've implemented to ensure that through greater phonetical awareness, instruction, that there is significant improvement, I'm advised, in terms of literacy in our schools, particularly at an earlier age. I'm very proud of the fact, as is needed, we're investing in the Commission of Inquiry recommendations. Very proud of the fact that we've got more police on the beat to ensure community and public safety.
How many police could you employ for $500 million?
I'm very proud of the fact of where we've invested in essential services, and proud of the fact
Thank you, members on my left.
of the areas that we've committed to in the 2030 Strong Plan for Tasmania, which is about economic growth and opportunity and aspiration and ambition. But it's also about a government with heart that supports the organisations that support vulnerable Tasmanians. And we committed to, at the last election, you didn't, to ensure that we supported the organisations, the community organisations that are advocated for by TASCOS, with a increase in funding so they can do their job in supporting vulnerable Tasmanians. More support for our community houses, for example. These are all good investments from a government with heart. All right?
Living on a credit card.
And the Labor Green government showed no heart when you sacked nurses and sacked police, and unemployment went up to 8.6% and the state went into recession when you were last in government, Labor and Green opposition. And so we will do what Tasmanians expect us to do, to have a public service and a state service that we can afford, that is sustainable, and that is delivering better services for the Tasmanian community.
No supplementary. I'll take Mr Garland, the independent member for Braddon.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is for the Premier. Our largest primary industry, the salmon industry, is being decimated by a disease outbreak. We're witnessing mortalities on a scale we've not seen before. Yet there's no public statements or media releases from the ministers or departments. Nothing from the Minister for Resources, the Minister for Biosecurity, the Minister for Public Health or the Minister for the Environment. Premier, why is the public being kept in the dark? What strain of rickettsia are we dealing with? Where are they being buried? And will taxpayers' money be paying anything towards this huge and expensive clean-up?
I'll call the Premier to the question.
Thank you, Mr Garland, for your very good question. And I may have to refer to the Minister when it comes to some more detail in your answers. But through our EPA and our discussions with industry, we're aware of a significant mortality event that is occurring, which we have the utmost concern. Firstly, on that, can I say that I expect openness and transparency from the companies in relation to this matter? Absolutely, 100%, if that is where your question is leading to. And I acknowledge the concerns in the community about this very concerning matter, and I also acknowledge the challenging situation that salmon companies have been dealing with due to the reported high number of mortalities occurring within a very short period of time. We are concerned about our environment. We share community concerns, and we are concerned also for the industry and wider impacts. And we as a government, of course, we understand the Minister is in close contact with the EPA, industry and relevant stakeholders on this matter. The issue is still unfolding, and we are yet to understand the full impact of what has happened. Now, there's a multifactorial nature of its causes, and we've strengthened the Environment Protection Authority's role as an independent environmental regulator to ensure that comprehensive environmental monitoring and regulation of our salmon industry. And they're reforms that we've embarked on and implemented in many respects. And those reforms started in around 2015, if my memory serves me correctly, because I recall being Minister for Primary Industries, and the Department of Primary Industries and Water and the Environment, as it was known then, was in charge of the growth of the industry, but also the regulation, if you like. And that didn't sit well with me or the government, and so that's why we have the independent EPA and an industry that we want to support and promote the growth, because it's very important for rural and regional Tasmania. It employs many thousands of Tasmanians, both indirectly and directly, through all the supply chain. So we're a very strong supporter of the salmon industry, as we should be. But that support is not a blank cheque. And I expect very clearly, Mr Garland,
Premier's time has in fact
and transparency from the companies.
The question, Mr Garland, sorry, Mr Garland, you weren't seeking supplementary, no. I will take the independent member for Bass, Mrs Pentland.
My question is to the Minister for Health. Minister, given the caseload midwifery industrial agreement of 2019 with the ANMF expired in 2022, with constant delays, we are now in March 2025. 3 years on and still no closer to having a signed agreement. With midwife caseloads continuing to be a significant issue, can you clarify why the Federation's request for a new log of claims was rejected, and why, despite them submitting an alternative proposal, they are still waiting for a response? Can you provide a clear timeframe for when negotiations will officially resume so the health of mothers and their babies are put before politics?
Call the Minister for Health.
Thank the Honourable Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for her question. Industrial agreements are handled at arm's length from ministers, but I will get some information for the honourable member to find out what the proposed timelines are. But in regards to our maternity nurses, can I just say to them, I thank them for what they do each and every day for looking after our mums and our bubs, and we are doing a lot in the department about building up our maternity workforce. We are offering $15,000 scholarships so that we can encourage more midwives to come and work in Tasmania. For new graduates, we're offering $10,000 for them to stay here. We're also recruiting new student midwives so that they can train here in Tasmania and do studies online to become qualified midwives. We're also now examining a fast-track qualification to enable more midwives in this state. So there's a lot of body of work going around about supporting our hard-working midwives who work in our maternity services. But in regards to the specific question, I will have to come back and update the House.
I've just confirmed that that's been taken on notice for an update of the House on the timeline for industrial negotiations. I'll take the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. My question is to the Premier. Premier, at a time when you've driven Tasmania into record debt, you've wasted millions of dollars in Scotland, with our Spirit 4 being proposed to be used as a floating refugee camp. Premier, can you confirm that the first time you became aware that the Scottish Government was not interested in your ridiculous proposal was on Saturday when they provided a statement to the ABC?
Great question. I'll call the Premier.
Well, thank you. I believe I covered that off in a media conference yesterday. An actual fact. Over the weekend, yes, that's correct. But can I say how important it is to get value for taxpayer dollars?
You lost $4 million on this.
Now, at the end of the day, given the circumstances that we are in, which is less than ideal.
You set fire to another $4 million.
Is that, and given that there is a tens of millions of dollars opportunity.
That's right. Yeah, right.
Opportunity.
Unrealised again.
Why would we not explore that?
Because it was
I was with
dumb idea.
The chair of the TCCI yesterday, who was asked the question, and I don't want to, I can't quote Wayne directly, but he said, well, all businesses look at commercial opportunities to see if they can improve their bottom line. And that's what TT Line did.
They told you it was unlikely.
And
still persisted.
Well,
they're in breach of their debt agreement.
Members on my left will allow the question to be answered. They can ask a supplementary.
So we explored an opportunity. It didn't work out. And now
it was the Tasmanian
we are
$2 million.
Members on my left, I did just ask you to hear the answer.
And now, as we always plan to do, Spirit 4 will be coming back to Tasmania for final fit out. And so it would be actually irresponsible.
Oh my God!
Given the circumstances,
honestly, don't lecture us on this, mate.
That we faced ourselves, given the circumstances, not to explore that opportunity, which for other entities has resulted in tens of millions of dollars. And we explored it. It didn't work out, but as we always plan to do, we are bringing Spirit 4 back to Tasmania for fit out. And so, you know, you can criticise us all you like, but we tried.
We'll keep going. Yeah.
We tried.
Yeah, you're a trier.
To boost TT Line's bottom line in the best interests of the Tasmanian taxpayer. Whereas what you have done continually with your negativity is not only undermine
Labor's fault. That's right.
Your incompetence.
Not only undermine TT Line, but also you're out there every single day undermining Tasmania and Tasmanians with your incessant negativity. And so I'll have none of that. We'll continue to do the best job we possibly can when it comes to what is a most
The Premier's time for
difficult
answering has
circumstances.
expired. I'm hearing the supplementary first before taking another
In the
question.
Premier's answer, Honourable Speaker, he confirmed that the first he learnt of the government not being, the Scottish Government not being interested in leasing Spirit 4 was on the weekend. Coming from that answer, I wonder if you can explain then what active commercial negotiations ever actually took place, given that it appears the Scottish Government was never interested.
I will actually draw the Premier to that as it does arise out of the answer that he gave.
Thank you. Well, TT Alliance brokers were negotiating with the international shipping agent, and that's how the system works. All right.
The Scottish Government was never interested.
And you explore these opportunities with the best of intent in the best interest of Tasmanians. Those opportunities were explored. They didn't eventuate, and now, as planned, we'll bring the ship back to Tasmania.
Thank you. I will take the independent member for, the JLN member for Lyons. Thank you, Mr. Jenner.
Honourable Speaker, I'm not sure if the question's for the Minister for Business, Industry and Resources or the Premier, but the question
So you do need to identify who the question is for.
I'll go for the Minister for Business, Industry and Resources then.
Thank you.
Obviously a lot
Premier
of
is delighted from the sounds of it.
has been this morning about saving money, and of course we've just spoken about the 4 coming back for a refit. So, Minister, the government initially assured Tasmanians that local workers would be responsible for fitting out the new ferry ships, under the assumptions that obviously the ferries would be coming back to Tasmania for completion. However, now it appears that workers have been flown to Scotland in a fly-in, fly-out basis to carry out this work. Can you clarify the total cost to taxpayers for the flights, accommodation and associated expenses with this arrangement?
Good question.
I call the Minister for Business, Industry and Resources.
I suspect that neither the Premier nor I have that information in our back pocket, so I'll take that aspect on notice. And it might take some time to get the exact figure for the honourable member for Lyons. But in relation to the Spirit 4 being in Leith in Scotland, can I confirm that there were a number of visits by parties to the ship, checking her out for the possibility of lease and or charter. And so let's just set that on the record, because it is important that there was genuine interest in potentially chartering the the in relation to keeping her in Leith and the sending over of crew, that is part and parcel of what the TT line has done on a number of occasions in conjunction with staff and the unions. In relation to the fit-out, as I understand it, and I'll be corrected on this, but as I understand it, the people that are being flown over at the moment are not for the purposes of fit-out, but for the purposes of maintaining the ship and now preparing her to come to Tasmania.
I don't think
in relation to the fit-out and local content from, and somebody can correct me, but I think from May 2021, we have always said that local content was Australian and Tasmanian content, something that those opposite continually misinform the public about and delete the Australian aspect of it and suggest it was only Tasmanian. May 2021, it was stated by my predecessors that this would be Australian and Tasmanian content. A lot of that has already been delivered in the fit-out of the ships, or the building of the ships, I should say, such as the example that I've used with hydro wood, which is part and parcel and incorporated in the build. So you can't retrofit it when she comes to Tasmania, or it could be, but a great extra expense. And so a lot of Tasmanians...
Sorry, can I just stop, and we'll stop the clock. There's no such thing as a point of clarification. You may make a point of order, but not a point. There is no clarification point.
About the Minister's gendered language about ships, I think that is something that perhaps he could update. It's not really appropriate these days.
I actually genuinely understand what the member is saying. As the wife of a seafarer, I assure you they're always called as female. That's an issue probably for the industry to take up rather than the Parliament of Tasmania. I will call I don't think it's the language that we can be responsible for in this House. I will call the Minister. I'll call the Minister to the question.
Excellent. Certainly the honourable member will be complaining that they're referred to as ships, because that is got she at the beginning of it. Really, to interrupt and answer a serious question, getting a serious answer on such a frivolous basis, just shows how the Greens deal with these matters. In relation to the matters that the honourable member raises, I will provide him with details on the record, but can assure him that
Thank you. The time has expired, and I will
installed here in
confirm
Tasmania.
that we'll be getting the answer at that one, but the Minister has indicated it may not be by the end of today. The Leader of the Greens.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Premier, Tasmanians are deeply distressed by your government's continued attack on this island's environment, as you would have seen outside this morning. Diseased fish have been dying in the hundreds of thousands, and the putrid results are still washing up on some of southern Tasmania's most beautiful beaches. Bruny Island, the Tasman Peninsula and Verona Sands, popular summer spots, are now stinking. For weeks, the EPA played down the health impact of rotting corpses, and Big Salmon even compared the gross chunks to health products sold in pharmacies. Today, public health officials are warning locals not to touch the salmon remains. Premier, do you acknowledge this looks set to be the rank reality of summers to come for locals? And will you rein in your salmon cronies to prevent that happening?
I missed the last bit of the question.
Could you
rein in the salmon cronies?
Sorry, could you come? Sorry, the Premier didn't hear the question. Could you? The question that you had at the end. Sorry, the question that you had at the end of your long preamble. Could you repeat for the House, please?
The preamble that I believe was in order because it was within time. Premier, do you acknowledge this looks set to be the rank reality of summers to come? Putrid, rotting fish turning up on beaches.
And before I call the Premier, I will remind members that the actions that were taken outside the chamber, the Parliament today, caused potential damage to a heritage building that is already a little bit on the fragile side, and I don't think we should be in any way glorifying that. We have always allowed protests at this place, but that kind of action puts at jeopardy the ability of us to safely allow protests on site, and that is a matter that we'll be investigating. And I call. I beg your sorry. I call the Premier to the question then. I'm happy with protests, and climbing our building and putting people at risk is not okay. Premier, I will call you to the answer to the question, please.
Well, thank you. The answer to your question is no.
Comfortable with this?
No.
Comfortable?
No.
Millions
of fish? No.
What are you going to do? You haven't done anything. Mr Garland was perfectly right. No press release.
So the Leader of the Greens will cease her interjections. I reassure it's her last question, and therefore being thrown out doesn't cause her much grief today, but it won't be tolerated. Premier, I will draw you to the question without engaging directly the Leader of the Greens.
Well, what's happened is clearly unacceptable, and there will be investigations as to the cause and effect of what's happened. The answer to your question every summer, the answer is no, but I expect full openness and transparency from the companies. We've got a very strong regulatory system with independent EPA, and the companies are on notice.
Supplementary question.
I'll hear the supplementary.
Thank you to the Premier for saying he expects full openness and transparency from the companies. Can you please confirm that all the information about the volumes and the numbers of dead fish will be made public?
I'll call the Premier.
Including the organisms.
I'll call the. If you've resumed your seat, you don't get to add to the question, Premier.
Well, first I expect, as per the EPA legislation, that all reporting will be as per the law and the legislation, and in a very open and transparent way. So we get a full understanding of why the situation has occurred.
The community wants to know.
Leader of the Greens, I have asked you to cease interjecting.
I know.
Premier, you will cease talking directly to the, and direct your answers through the chair so that we can move on to the next question. Thank you. Resume your seat as well if you wish. The final question of the first question time back goes to the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Premier, you've been claiming since January that TT Line were in active commercial negotiations to lease Spirit 4. You've used it as the basis for your refusal to answer any questions about it. But we didn't find out for 2 years that you bailed out RMC in 2022, and it wasn't until Labor asked questions in Parliament that we discovered that you bailed them out again last year. You kept the delays at Berth 3 secret from Tasmanians until we dragged them out of U2, and you didn't tell the tourism industry that they weren't going to have a Spirit 4 operating this summer. Given the only public statement from the Scottish Government that has been released said they weren't interested, and in your words, at all, can you see why we're struggling to believe anything you say and believe that the negotiations were ever serious, and it's not just a ruse to keep the Spirits hidden in Scotland for as long as possible? Will you table all correspondence received from the Scottish Government or their people acting for them in relation to the potential lease?
The question has expired. I will call the Premier to the question.
Yeah, thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Look, I believe the Minister's given a very comprehensive answer when it comes to this. They were serious negotiations.
Visiting the ship is not a serious negotiation.
Opportunities. A number of leasing options, I believe, were explored in the best interests of the Tasmanian taxpayer. Now, there are opportunities around budget, GBEs, to scrutinise these matters, of course, and I can assure you, I reject firstly the premise of your question, and this has been a very challenging set of circumstances. What I can say this though, I have got enormous confidence in the TT Line board and the chair of TT Line, who is working through with a fine-tooth comb all these matters, which have exercised the community, who are quite rightly concerned over the course of the last couple of years. And so I want to make that very, very clear. But we, of course, we will always be open and transparent, and I can assure the honourable member.
I'll hear the point of order, Premier.
Just to remind the Premier, the question was asking whether he would table all correspondence received from the Scottish Government or its intermediaries in relation to the potential lease.
We'll seek advice on those matters and get back to the House.
Sorry, so can I just confirm that the Premier will seek advice and update the House on if it's possible to provide that information? Thank you. Yes, the Minister wishes to add to a question. Something I actually encourage. Well done, you.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I just want to provide an update to the Honourable Member for Bass in regards to her question. I have sought advice regarding this matter and can advise negotiations for a replacement caseload midwifery agreement commenced in August 2023. Negotiations between the Department and the ANMF have been ongoing, with an offer rejected by the ANMF in June 2024. I'm advised a revised offer is in the final stages of approval by the State Service Management Office, and the ANMF will be notified as soon as this process is completed.
Thank you. The Minister Betts to add to an answer?
Further to the answer that I provided to the member for Lyons, whilst I didn't have it in my back pocket, my staff had a 5-page document which I think will be very helpful, and I seek to table that for the benefit of the member and the House.
You don't need to seek leave as the government, you may just table that. So
thank you.
Thank you. There's no further, you want to add to yours at this stage, Premier? No. With that, the question time period has concluded and we will move into constituency questions. As our friends from the upper house leave us, I'll take Ms Badger. Thank you.
A question to the Minister for Primary Industries on behalf of Lion constituents battling foxglove. Thank you, Minister, for finally declaring Foxglove digitalis a weed in Tasmania. And this is a very welcome move that could make a huge difference in protecting the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area, our national parks and local bushland. But for the declaration to be fully effective, there must be broad spread community education on the various management zones and a funding stream to support local government, Parks and Wildlife Service and community groups to adequately deal with the problem which has now been recognised. Minister, can you please outline your plan for community education and what additional funding will be directed into tackling foxglove across Tasmania?
Thank you. Further constituency questions? You were waiting for an answer then, weren't you? Mr Willie, member for
My
Clark.
questions are to the Minister for Infrastructure on behalf of my constituent Greg from Lutana. The RSB Nyena was commissioned in Hobart on October 16, 2021, and the need to plan the sewerage works relocation from Macquarie Point to Selfs Point occurred around the same time. For over 4 years, the government has been aware that a sewerage pipeline would be necessary and that a solution needed to be found for refuelling of the ship, which cannot transit the Hobart Bridge, Tasman Bridge. Both pipelines start almost in the same place near Macquarie Wharf 6 and end about 600 metres apart in the Newtown Bay area. 1. Did the government consider dual pipelines, in particular a fuel line for RSB Nyena? Why was it ruled out and on what date? 2. Has the government done a cost-benefit analysis of the different options, including a dual pipeline, barges or trucks? 3. Have the safety risks of the different options been considered? If so, are some options safer than others? And 4. Has the government considered revisiting the dual pipeline proposals?
Thank you. Sorry, that did go a little over time. I apologise, I wasn't paying attention. I will call the member for Bass.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Police, Fire and Emergency Management. A number of my Bass constituents have complained about levels of crime in Launceston CBD. What steps has the government taken recently to reduce street crime in Launceston?
Thank you. I'll take the member for Franklin, Ms Brown.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Transport, and it comes from a number of students in our shared electorate of Franklin. Their question is, as students attending Hobart College, they constantly struggle to make it to and from school every day, despite living relatively close to school. Why do you use bus driver shortages as an excuse for lack of efficiency, well-organised public transport when the conditions and pay are so poor for such a challenging job? What policies do you have planned to help combat poor worker conditions and bad bus route management, and how do you plan to implement them?
Further constituency questions? I'll take the member for Bass, Mr Wood.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Parks. I recently visited Ben Lomond with a constituent. It was good to see works progressing on the $2.8 million Ben Lomond an all-year-round destination. Can you please advise what additional infrastructure projects are planned and when is the expected that the works on Jacob's Ladder will commence? Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further requests. There's an entitlement for the JLN or independent members. There being no further constituency questions. Are there any